Hello, welcome to my tutorial video. Again, this is Czetsuya and today we will be building a project with Docker. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Docker is a software delivery service in packages called container. Its main purpose is to enable rapid application deployment on different server environments. For instance, you can easily configure a deployment for integration and testing environment without actually setting up a whole new set of servers. This is really helpful for developers who are working on one of the project's modules because with Docker, they can deploy the rest of the system without actually configuring them. In this tutorial, we will create a Docker and Docker Compose templates that will let us run a Java EE web application with database connection deployed on a Wildfly instance. Our Docker Compose will contain the following containers. The Postgres container, which is checkout from the image Postgres version 10. If you haven't done yet, please review the Docker Compose and Docker tutorial because we will not discuss the commands and the properties here. It's well documented on their website already. So this image comes from Docker Hub, which is the Postgres and version 10. If we go to Docker Hub, we will see that there are many available images here that we can use in our own project, such as in this case, we are using Postgres. And here we can use the version that we need in our application. Then we open the port 5432 in our local environment as it's the default port for the PostgreSQL, and we set the environment variables. These environment variables are well documented in the Docker Hub website as is written here. So when we create a container of this image, it will create a new database with this name and using this terawars user and password, and the Postgres port is 5432. Then what about the volumes? Let's check this setting or entry. If we read the documentation, we will know that when we copy a script, SQL script in this folder, then when we instantiate a Postgres container, then it will execute that script. That's why we are mounting the import dash Postgres file from our input files folder, which is this one. So what it does is it will create this table and it will insert this record. Then this second entry lets us save the state of our database because without this, when we terminate our container, then the state of the database will not be saved. So what it does is it just maps the left folder or file to the right. This is from the instance of this image, and then it's mapped to the machine's folder where Docker is running. The next is the adminer. Adminer is a database management tool. It's also well documented on their website. So here it is, and basically we are just creating a container from the adminer image, and we are exposing port 8081. So as you can see, it depends on Postgres. That's why the container name here, the container definition here is important because some other containers might depend on that one. And then this one is the Wildfly, which is basically a Wildfly instance that is built from the dot directory. That means it will look for a Docker file in the same directory where the Docker compose is. In this case, this Docker file. But before we look into the Docker file, let us first check the properties that we defined here. So we expose port 8080 and 9990, and we set the environment variables. These are the database connection properties, should be the same as the environment variables that we set in our PostgreSQL instance. And then we also mount some volumes here, the log, the data, and the configuration file. That's why, because later on, if there are some errors in our application, we may want to check the logs. That's why we are mounting this local directory, this instance directories to our local directories. Now let's check the Docker file. So again, these are the environment variables. So this will be overridden by the environment variables that we set in the Docker compose file. But sometimes you may want to run Docker file alone. That's why we have some default values here. So we also have the DS name, data source name, and the JNDI name, which will be used by the web application that we have here. So, and then we change the user to root so that we can execute these commands. In here, we download the PostgreSQL driver into the temp directory. Then we change our working directory to temp, copy the wildfly command and module dash install files from the input files. So these two files. And then we search and replace new lines, because without doing the sed command, it will not run. You will encounter a not so obvious error. And then we add an executable permission to this file, because later on we will execute this as we see in this line. So when we execute the wildfly dash command file, it will here we set the variables. It will run JBoss, and then it will wait until JBoss is running, until JBoss has successfully started up. After that, it will run the module dash install CLI using the JBoss CLI command. So the module dash install that CLI command adds the PostgreSQL jar module into the Wildfly's instance modules folder, and then it creates a data source driver as well as the data source that we will use in our application later. And then after it installs the data source subsystem, it will terminate the Wildfly, and then it will return the control to the Docker file. Then it will download the Java EE6-webapp.war, which is a default war template that I got from Eclipse. So it's also available on one of my GitHub repository here. I'll add the reference on all the GitHub repositories that are used in this video in the reference section of this video. So all of this. So this is the Java E6 web app. It will the Docker file will download that into the deployments folder, and then it will start the Wildfly instance. So when the Wildfly, no, this will add the user admin for the Wildfly instance, and then finally it will start the Wildfly instance. And when it starts, obviously the Java E6-webapp.war will be deployed because it is inside the deployments folder. And then our Docker compose file also runs the keycloak. So Again, you can check the Docker Hub for the documentation on Keycloak. Here we create a container Keycloak from the Keycloak image, and then we set the environment variables. So this will be used by the container that we created. So we will try that later. And it will create tables in the PostgreSQL that we have here. That's why we have these variables from the Postgres instance that we have above. And these are the Keycloak specific configuration. That's why if we search Keycloak in the Docker Hub, JBoss Keycloak, and we search for these properties, yep, we should be able to see them, the user and the password. When we set that and when we access the Keycloak instance, we should be able to log in using this username and password. And then we have this Talon. Talon is actually a tool that we can use for searching and showing logs. So it's accessible on port 8082. There should also be a documentation available on Docker Hub. And there are a lot of instances. So in this one, I'm using the one from OpenCell. So let's try running this Docker Compose file. I'll be running this command in another machine because I'm currently recording on a Windows machine and I don't have Docker on this one. So here we are going to run the Docker Compose dash. The command to run a Docker Compose file is docker-compose app with the parameter build. If you are running initially, because if you already run, you don't need to build the Docker Compose. You need to add the build parameter when you change something so that it will recreate the containers. So let's try. First, it's building the Wildfly instance, as we can see in the log. Then it adds a Java E6 war to the deployments. So here, I think it's already starting the Wildfly server. And then, yep, correctly set up the data source. And then this is already the Keycloak running, as we can see in the logs. Yeah, Keycloak. And then I think that's it. All the containers are running. So looking at the documentation that I have in my GitHub repository, let's try accessing these containers one by one. First is the Java E6-web app. Since I'm running the Docker Compose in another machine, I need to forward the request using ngrok. So ngrok is a library that lets you access your local machine from another one. So this tool is really helpful in testing. So first, let's forward the 8080 port, which is the Wildfly instance. So I'll be copying this one, which is the HTTP version. It forwards this URL to localhost 8080. So let's paste that here, and Java EE6 dash web app. There, we have our instance. So let's add member carry at gmail.com, and let's register. Okay, I think it correctly registered. As we can retrieve the data here. Now let's check the database. So let's stop the ngrok and again check the port of the database, which is the adminer port 8081. Let's forward port 8081. Copy this URL and paste it here. It's a pain, but it works. So what is the server name? The system is PostgreSQL. Server name is the container name that we use in the definition we have here. So the database name is Terawars. Password Terawars. Database is Terawars. You should be able to log in. And here we have the keycloak tables, because in our Docker Compose file, remember that the keycloak creates its table in the same database where the Java EE6 is connecting, which is this container. So that's why we have the keycloak tables here, as well as the member. So here is our member table. And remember, we created a carry instance. And this record I created earlier. So this is the default record that is inserted from the import SQL script. Next, we can check the Talon 8082. Okay, copy this URL and paste it here. Talon will show us the logs of our server. So here we have the server log, which is actually the wildfly's instance log, because as we can see here, it depends on the wildfly. And yeah, it checks the logs inside the output files logs, which is the log that we have here. It's really useful for testing. So especially when you have, let's say you have a testing or staging environment, this Talon is really useful in debugging, because you don't have to access the server just to view the log. Here we have it. So you should be able, I'm not sure if I have a log that logs the user creation, but let's see if we have that user carry. Yeah, we have it here, registering carry. So this is what we did earlier. We register a member named carry. And then going to the next component container that we have is keycloak for 8083. Copy this URL. Sadly, the URL change every time you run ngrok, but I think that makes sense. So here we have the keycloak instance, and remember the default keycloak user and password is admin. So that's why if we log in with that username, we should be able to. And here is our keycloak instance successfully installed and running. If you want to create a realm, just check the documentation for keycloak on Docker Hub on what properties to set or how to do that. Should be able to. There should be a documentation about that here. And I think that's it for this video. We have successfully run all these containers and I've shown you all the instances. One thing that I would like to show is that when we stop this machine, or when I stop the R compose. But first, let me show you the output files. Here we have the Postgres data. Oops. Not sure, I don't have access. But as you can see, we have the Postgres data folder here. That's why when we stop the Docker compose and when we run it again, we should be able to recover the data because it's inside this folder, this output files, which I don't have a right because it's written by root. Well, I can change the but it's dangerous on production. Don't do it in production. So here we can see the Postgres data where the database and records are created. So that's why when we access again the adminer, what port is that again? Adminer is port 8081. We should still be able to see the records that we have created earlier. Postgres, and our container name is Postgres, and login. Don't save. Check the member table, and we should be able to see the records here like this. So there you go. I hope you learned something from this tutorial. If you have questions, don't hesitate to drop by in the comment section. I'll be sure to get back to you when I have the time. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Thank you for watching and bye.